Welcome back to the Mental Game Gym podcast, the place where athletes train the part of the game that most people ignore, but where the biggest gains happen. I'm Andrew, the mental performance coach for athletes who want to play free, play focused, and actually enjoy the grind without getting stuck in their own head. If you've been following along for the last couple of episodes, we talked about reflection. We talked about resetting after mistakes. And today's topic ties both of these together, and it's about mental imagery, also known as visualization. But instead of giving you a motivational quote about picturing success and then just calling it a day, I want to teach you how to use it like a skill. One that works before you compete, during the moment, and after the performance to keep growing. Let's dive in and let's start with what mental imagery actually is. So mental imagery is when you rehearse a movement, a situation, or an outcome in your mind as vividly and realistically as possible. So your brain gets a rep without your body moving. And it works because the brain doesn't really know the difference between a physical rep and a well-imagined one. Have you ever had a nightmare where you wake up and you're kind of panting or you're sweating? That's kind of what's happening in this situation, is that your brain thinks that what you're dreaming about is actually happening, so therefore it's waking you up. Or maybe watching a scary movie and something jumps out, right? And you know it's just a movie and it's not real, but your brain believes it's actually happening and therefore you jump, right? Maybe you scream. Okay, so this is what's happening when we're using it in sport. If we can vividly imagine a situation, then the same neural pathways light up from when you're actually doing the activity. The same motor programming gets fired and the same emotional responses get triggered. So that means that every mental rep that you can take can build confidence, reinforce a skill, and prepare you for pressure moments. And this is also why it's a huge skill to use if you're injured and you can't physically play, because it keeps everything ticking over. But here's why most athletes kind of underutilize this skill, is because they only use sight and they only use it before a performance. So to get the full benefit, we can use it before, during, and after, and we can use all of the senses. So of course, sight, right? So what do we see around us? But then we can use sound, right? What are we hearing? The crowd, coaches, your breath. What can we feel, right? So maybe the ball in your hand or the stick in your hand or the floor under your feet. Then we can think about smell. Or is there a smell that reminds you of performance? Maybe it's sweat. Maybe it's chalk. Maybe it's just a familiar smell, like freshly cut grass is one that I hear often. And then taste, right? Maybe you're chewing gum, or maybe you can taste the dryness in your mouth. So that's how we can trick our brain into thinking we've been here before. So an example would be a gymnast who would freeze on the beam during high pressure meets. What we did was we added mental reps of her routine with full sensory detail. So we added in, she imagined the chalk dust, the feel of the beam under her feet, the sound of the crowd. And then within weeks, her competition mindset had completely changed. It felt familiar and it wasn't scary. Okay, so now let's look at the 3 key phases where you can use imagery: before, during, and after. So before is the classic use of imagery, and for good reason, because before a game, meet, or competition, mental imagery can help you calm your nerves, build your confidence, set your focus, and also pre-live situations that you're about to face, especially maybe stressful situations that you would rather not face. Think of it like a dress rehearsal. And when it's done right, it makes game time feel like a repeat performance, right? Again, we've already been there. So here's how we can do a simple pre-game imagery routine in a few steps. The first step is finding a quiet place, somewhere where you're going to be alone, you're not going to get interrupted, there's no noise around you. Then take 2 to 3 slow breaths to calm yourself down so that you can really start to focus. And then choose a few key situations. So maybe it's like your first shift, or maybe it's a specific part of a routine, or a specific challenge that you want to respond well to. And then go through those and imagine them, but use all of the senses. So what does the moment feel like in your body? What equipment do you have on? How does that feel? I recommend that athletes when they're doing this, they have a piece of equipment. So if it's hockey, maybe you've got a stick in your hand, right? Or even just a mouth guard in your mouth. So having a piece of equipment is going to help make it more real, more vivid, because you can actually feel how that feels. Think about, what do you see in your field of vision? What's around you? What would be around you when you're in this competition, in this performance? What do you hear? What are some familiar sounds that you hear? So incorporating all of these, and then maybe some smell, right? If there's a familiar smell, can you incorporate that into this experience to make it as real as possible? So some examples could be a quarterback, right? They might visualize reading a defense, staying calm in the pocket, and making a clean throw. So maybe they're feeling the ball in their hand, feeling their body moving, maybe physical contact as well, and feeling that. A sprinter could mentally rehearse a start, the drive phase, and maintaining form at top speed. Or a hockey player might run through a forecheck, a clean zone exit, and their first shift intensity. So run through each of those situations, do it for 3 to 5 minutes, set a timer, and if you do that 4 times a week, just 3 to 5 minutes, you'll start to see an improvement in how you can visualize things and making it as real as possible. Practice 3 to 5 minutes a day leading up to a competition, and that can start building that confidence and that focus. So now here's where things get really interesting, and we can start using imagery during a performance. And these are what I call micro visuals. 3 to 10 seconds, quick mental reps that you can do between shifts or sets or breaks in play to reset and refocus. So let's say, you had a bad shift, or you missed a shot, or you slipped in a routine, or maybe you're just feeling yourself kind of getting tight. Typically what happens is your brain will start running that mistake, over and over again in your head, or, you start to focus on it and you think, well, why did I do that? What are other people going to think of me? Imagery is how you can interrupt that loop and refocus on what you want to do next, right? Really what's important, instead of focusing on what's just happened. So here's an example, right? We can take 3 steps here. The first one is pause and take a breath. We need that space, we need that pause, and we need that breath. Then take a quick physical reset. So this could be wiping your hand on your jersey. You're kind of wiping that situation, that mistake, that frustration, you're wiping it away. Or taking your hat off, putting it back on, adjusting a piece of equipment that you have on. The important thing here is that you're doing it intentionally. So maybe you do something already. Say, for example, we're taking off our hat. I'm taking off my hat. When I put it back on, that has gone, and I am now able to focus on what's next. And then we see yourself responding the way that you want to. In your mind, can you see yourself responding how you want to respond? A tennis player between points could picture a solid serve or a confident rally. A basketball player at the free throw line could feel the form and hear the swish of the ball going into the net. Or a goalie in hockey could replay a clean post-to-post slide after letting a goal in. And again, can we incorporate more than just sight, and we're using more senses here? These reset visuals can become kind of like your mental huddle. They can calm the noise and shift you back to the present moment. So we've looked at how we can use mental imagery before and during a performance. Now let's look at how we can use it after a performance. So usually what athletes do after a performance is they'll either avoid the bad stuff, so they won't think about the bad stuff that happened, they won't want to talk about it, or they'll go the opposite way and they'll obsess over mistakes. They'll obsess over every little detail and things that didn't go well. Using mental imagery can give you like a middle ground. You can process what happened while still reinforcing confidence and learning. So there's 2 big ways that we can use imagery after a performance. The first one is to reinforce success. Picking one thing, at least one thing that went well, and then relive it as vividly as possible. And this helps your brain kind of file that moment as a success. Even if it was a tough game, you will be able to find at least one thing that went well, one thing that you were happy with. The second way that we can use it after a performance is mentally redoing mistakes or difficult situations that you faced. So let's say maybe you got beat on defense or you choked under pressure. Instead of replaying that with regret, try picturing that same situation, but then imagine responding how you want to. Composed, decisive, focused, for example. Just keep playing it again and maybe change, okay, well, how do I want to do things next time? If this situation happened again, how would I want to respond? What would I do in this situation? So an example here would be a softball player had a throwing error that cost her team a playoff game, and she couldn't stop replaying it in her mind. So then using imagery to replay that throw with a clean read and a confident delivery, it didn't erase the moment that happened, but it helped her move through it and show up better next time. And this is how we can take ownership of our mental game, not by forcing positivity, but by turning painful moments into growth reps. We're learning from situations that we've been in, both good moments and not so good moments. We're learning and we're growing from every experience that we've been in. So let's wrap up what we've discussed. Mental imagery is a skill, and that means you need to practice it in order to get better at it. And the 3 key ways that you can practice is before, during, and after. And the magic is in the details. So the more senses that you use, the more powerful those mental reps become. So I'm going to give you a challenge this week. And your challenge is to pick one phase, before, during, or after, and spend 5 minutes practicing mental imagery each day. Set a timer and keep it short and focused. It might be messy to begin with. It might be kind of unclear when you're visualizing and you're trying to imagine things, especially when you're using other senses. Maybe you haven't practiced what you hear or what you taste or what you feel. So it's important that you get the reps and that you practice. You'll notice that the more you do it, the easier, the better it becomes. And remember, your mind is your most powerful training partner. So start giving it reps and you'll start seeing the results. Thanks for hanging out with me today and listening to this episode. Train the mind, trust the game, and I'll talk to you next week.